All right, so you found yourself at this page, and now you want to make something. So Chat-GPT is pretty cool. No history here is going to mean that you're going to have to teach it a little bit. So what you're going to want to do is kind of come in here and say, hey, can you write a script with Blender Python ? Hit enter. Certainly. Okay, so now it's going to write out a little script for you and just have a little bit of fun. This script is simply to open Blender, switch to scripting workspace. Okay, that's fine. Don't really want to do all that. I want to do something different. And now it's going to remember your conversation. And so every time you do something, it's going to put it in here as a chat conversation. I reset mine so it's a little bit fresh. I was just going to start from the beginning. Now I want to just tell it, write a script that adds a plane to the scene with 10 UV spheres. And then it's going to do it for you. And if it doesn't, you can kind of push it a little bit and then just roll the middle mouse wheel up a little bit so it's not flipping the screen, and you can kind of control as it goes down. You'll see the import BPY, import random. These are really important. If you don't have import BPY, nothing is going to show up no matter what you do. And if you kind of read down the code, you can see the little hashtag. This is not code. This is just telling you what this operator or what this function or statement is going to do. And so this is going to say in range 10, blah, 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 calculate, and it's going to start putting in spheres and all that good stuff. Now, it doesn't know anything else. It's just a basic script. You could run it. And so what you would do is you could copy the code, come over to Blender, and see if it works. So we'll go over to the scripting workspace, go to text, click new, Control V, then you can hit play. And what it's going to do is it's going to shove all these in random places. So we have the beginning of a script here. Now we want to tell it something different. And I'll just say, can you write it as an add-on? And I'm kind of doing this at a beginner speed, pace, level. So if you've used it before and you're very proficient with Chat-GPT, this definitely isn't for you. This would be for beginners, intermediate. You people haven't come across this yet. Just roll the middle mouse wheel up. Let's see what it's doing. So put in the BL_info. Okay, this is going to tell the Blender interface this is an add-on, and it can now be saved as a .py file, as a .py, and I'll show you that in just a minute. See, the import BPY is still there, and the import random, and it's still writing it out. Now, I've found there are plenty of limitations with Chat-GPT, and I haven't paid for it yet, so I presume it will do a little bit more, a little bit quicker, right? But as long as you have a register, an unregister, and it's defining everything, and then you have your main at the bottom, more than likely, if you have that, and you have this information, then it's going to install like an add-on. Now, it's going to tell you everything. This installs like an add-on, blah, blah, blah. Now, that's cool. So what I'd do is I would copy this code, come back to Blender, and I want to unregister this one first. So I'm going to unlink it, go to text, new, Control V, go to text, save as, and I want to save it as like AAA, whatever you can find it, .py, and just click save. Now we can go back to a regular layout workspace, and none of these are connected. It's kind of cool. And now go to Edit, Preferences, Install. What was that? It installed it already for the previous one when it ran the script. So you gotta be careful you don't have a bunch of instances of it. So double click here and then click it on. If you get error messages, then something isn't right. You're gonna have to go back in. And so now we want to find this. We don't know where this is just yet. So what I want to do is hit the end panel, and we'll see if anything popped up here. I got my one-click damage and all this other fun stuff. I just got to find out where it actually went. So I'm going to go back over, and this should be set up as an add-on, and maybe it tells us in the 3D viewport it's under mesh. Going to add. So let's go back, and apparently I typoed and put US spheres. So what I want to do is correct it. So you can make corrections. I meant 10 UV spheres, comma, please rewrite this script. And then click the little arrow to come down. You can watch as it goes. Sure, here's a modified script, blah, blah, blah. And it'll write out the script again, 10 UV spheres. I'm going to check the code up here. 10 US spheres. So it's not as intelligent as you would hope, not as intuitive of a setup, but I have noticed, and I had a ton of different things on here, just trying to research different ways to achieve things. And unfortunately, it's very limited because it's no knowledge after 2021, supposedly. And so now it's rewritten this is the modified script that adds a plane, UV spheres, blah, blah, blah. And what I want to do is say, rewrite as an add-on, and then it's going to rewrite it with the BL info because it'll just do it for you. There's no reason to try to copy paste and miss something or screw up an indent in the actual code. And so what we can do is go back to scripting, text. I'll just click new and come back over here. It should be done in just a second. All right, so here we go. Now it's telling you to install this as a .py file. It lets you know that. It'll tell you where. It's supposed to be under the Add Mesh menu. And it would not have worked previously, and it still may not. So I'm going to go in and save as. And I'll just overwrite by double-clicking that file. I'll come back to the layout, back to edit, preferences. It should still be here, so I can just remove this one. If it doesn't have the unregistered, you're going to be in trouble. So you'll have to close Blender and restart it, and I'll just reactivate it, and I'll go to the Add menu. And here is now Add UV Spheres. Okay, so I hit A for all and delete. And let's see, Shift A should allow me to add those UV spheres and the plane. All right, so it did exactly what we wanted, which is really cool. So, but now we've got to modify it just a touch. And so let's get a measurement for it first. And if I scale this up a touch, I'll see that this is all at 6 on the X, Y, and Z. Maybe I could bring this to 5 and it would just about encompass all of them. All right, so that's fine. We'll take that in and say, modify, if I can get it to work, modify the script. And I'm not going to talk as I'm typing. All right, so now we're going to try to add rigid body physics, size 5 to the plane, and so they will interact with the plane. And just hit enter. And it'll tell you, sure, I can do that, blah, blah, blah. And it should spit out a code. And we'll just wait for that to go. Come back over here and clean all this up. And come back and get ready. I'm going to uninstall this little add-on right here. I'll go ahead and remove. And whatever I make, I'm actually going to put it up, you know, for free on the Gumroad, so you guys can just pick it up, have some fun with it, play with it. And the cool thing is that if you're not getting this to work, you can take the Py file code that I had and dump it. As long as it's not too long, you could dump it into Chat-GPT and it will read it and tell you exactly what the code is going to do. So now it's done. And if we go through here, I can see the sphere scale, so we could change the scale of the sphere. We could randomize that. Let's see, the X, Y, Z random. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this code. And let's go back over to the scripting tab. And I want to just unlink that just in case. Click New, Control V, Text, Save As. Overwrite that file because that file doesn't mean anything. And go back to the layout. I'm going to go to the Add menu, Mesh menu, and I have not got anything there. Did I even install it yet, or am I jumping too far ahead of myself? I think I'm jumping too far ahead. Okay, so let's get that installed and add UV spheres. And now you come up with an error. Non-type object has no attribute enabled. All right, so you ended up with one sphere and a plane, potentially, because there's no telling what Chat-GPT is going to spit out. So I'd come back over to scripting, and this is just a workflow. So Control V with your mouse here, excuse me, Control C, copy that, come back, Control V, just paste that error, click down, let's see what it says. It's going to think for a second. The error you're seeing is caused by attempting to access the rigid body properties of an object that does not have one, caused by a number of issues. And then you can read and see whatever else it says, and it says, hey, here's a script that should fix this. And it's just fun. You can kind of play around with this. I wouldn't say drown in it, because ultimately, if you don't know any Python, you can make some simple things. I'm able to troubleshoot with Chat-GPT with my add-on that I've created. And so if I was to come back over here to the splash screen and pull this thing up, you can see what I'm actually doing with the Serpent's code here. This is a pie menu. This is what it looks like with operators and Serpent's codes. It's a very basic setup. And let's see, do I have it? Yeah, I've got the carver tool and all this built in. So this is my add-on. You're not going to make anything like this with Chat-GPT, so don't try to get this complex, because it's going to be about 1,000 lines of code to get this. I don't think it's going to do it. So don't stress yourself out. In other words, let me just create a new general, and I'll go back to scripting, and I want to uninstall the one I had in here. And I'm just going to come back over. All right, so it fixed the code potentially. Let's see, it adds, technically adding the rigid body to it, and it'll tell you what it did. Yeah, okay, so it should be for a newly created mesh. I'll copy that. I'm going to probably go a little long with this tutorial because it's going to take that so you can see the troubleshooting workflow. Make sure you got your register main, the BL info, the import, and then the random. It's going to change. No two codes are going to be the same, but let's go ahead and save as. I'll overwrite the AAA, come back over, edit, preferences. I'll go to the install and go to install it. Now what should happen, I'll just hit AAA, enter. Okay, so literally nothing is coming up for some reason. And at this point, it's not a bad idea to just close Blender. And I'll just open up a completely different version that doesn't even have it in there, because sometimes it gets a little convoluted. Let's click New, Control V, and paste that in. And now I want to save this as the AAA. Come back over, edit, preferences, install, and this should work. And so nothing is coming up, even though I've got a fresh copy. So I want to look at the code real quick. I don't see anything wrong with it, but I'm just going to tell it add-on does not install. Please check the code. And I'm just keeping it really simple. I'm not telling it to compile and everything else. It's an AI. And now it says, I apologize for that. It seems like there's an issue with the indentation in the previous code block. Now let's come back. Yeah, okay, the indentation's all screwed up. So it's not even gonna show. And we come back over here, and I'll pause the video for a second. All right, so here we go. Blah, blah should help you with scale of 5, all that good stuff. Let's copy this code. Keep it super simple. It's the best way. New, Control V. This is just the workflow for troubleshooting it base, because I don't want that extra block in there, that extra line of code, which is effectively nothing. And let's save as, double click on that, go to edit, preferences, try to install this again. And it's possibly because I'm using a different version of Blender that's not really compatible with. So I'm just going to jump over to the blender.org. I'll go to the long-term support, downloads, long-term support, and I'm using, and it crashed unfortunately, I'm using the Blender launcher, but when it crashes, you got to restart the computer. It's kind of over. And I don't want to do all that. So I want Blender 3.3.2 LTS, which is the most stable one, period. And I get that for the Windows installer. And yeah, there we go. So that'll download. I'll pause and come back. All right, so I downloaded 3.3.2, which is just the version that has worked best for this kind of thing. Everything seems to work pretty good with 3.6 as well, but I'm just going to have it rewrite the code one more time because it says, hey, sorry, we'll go ahead and update this with necessary changes to ensure it installs properly as an add-on. All right, and it'll tell you what it changed. It added enabled attribute to the rigid body sphere, changed the register and unregister, which is pretty darn important, so it won't show up properly if you go to install it if that's not correct. You kind of get, familiar with a few things here. Click new, paste this in. The indent looks good. It's got the import, the BL info, the register, unregister. Come back, text, save as. And you know what? We can save this as something a little bit different, just in case there's a conflict. Put another A in there. There's just all these little ways to troubleshoot this stuff. Go in, and I'll go for the quad A, and boom, here we go. And so, for some reason, when I downloaded that, it transferred. There was a hidden version of the spheres in there, the old one. And so that was the conflict. No big deal. I'll enable this one, which should be the new one. Let's go to the layout. Let's add, go to mesh, UV spheres. And so, get rid of my cube. So now if you've hit the wall on some of this stuff, then all you really have to do is just talk to it for a second. Let's say this script does not add rigid body physics, and it does not have 10 UV spheres. Rewrite to add keyframes so the spheres fall and stop at the plane. And then we'll give it a second for that and see what it can spit out for us. And now it's done that. I've already pasted it all in. I'm just going to go in and remove this one. Go to install. I already overwrote it. Let's go ahead and add that in and see what we get. And let's hit A and delete. Come on down. Come on down. So add spheres. All right, so here we go. It is now added in the 10 spheres, not necessarily all in the right place. All right, let's see what it did. Let's bring up a timeline and see if we can actually hit play on this. It's not going to be glitchy for me. There we go. And so now we've got some keyframes that have been added. That's fantastic. Okay, so it's not necessarily acting like I wanted to, but it's definitely doing something. So I'm going to scale this up, G and Z, and bring it down. Pause that. Let's bring these back, say, I'll bring the entire timeline to 50 and loop it. And it's not acting the right way. So what I want to do is I want to go into the physics tab. And it's funny, I haven't done any rigid body physics for a while. I'll make this. Let me hit play. That's very distracting. I'll turn this into a passive so it'll stay put, and I'm going to hit play. And there you go. You got your bouncing balls on there. It's kind of lengthy to get there, but that's kind of cool. It would give you a nice little starting point. Yeah, kind of fun. So let's play with it a little bit further, because that's now an add-on, right? So what we can do is it's now remembered everything. I'm going to go ahead and hit the down arrow. The script works. And now we want to modify this. Now, what do we want to do? Let's tell it to rewrite the add-on. Just keep saying words like add-on to it to make sure it keeps putting the BL statement in there. Otherwise, it's not going to write it. Rewrite the add-on and add a, I don't know if we want to do this or not. Let's see, 3-point light. Each light should have different colors. And don't worry if you have a typo sometimes, unless it's US spheres like I did. Keep the functionality the same, but add the lights. And we'll just keep it simple. We'll step it up one thing at a time, because we don't want it to try to go through and write a whole bunch of complex code until you've got some memory in here, and then it'll do more advanced things. And so let's check this out. We got the spheres in this class. Come down, got the plane, got the range, we got the scale of the plane. Come down, the spheres, you're going to have the rigid body physics and the scale, which you could randomize as well. We can do that in the next step. And rigid body kinematics has been added with keyframes 1 to 50. That can also be changed. Now we have light locations. Here's our 3-point light. It's writing it in. It's writing in the colors and the ranges of points. Okay, so that's cool. Now here's the crux, and we just reached it. This is pretty long, and now it's not finishing our add-on, so there may or may not be a register set up here. Now, from this point, you can try to take the function. Let's grab the BL info, and I'm just going to scroll down and bring it to finished. And I'll copy that, and I'm going to come over to the scripting area, and I'll grab it from finished, bring it all the way to the top, Control V, and I want to save as, because this one's working. I'm not going to, never mind, I double clicked it. Shame on me, but there's a history in Chat-GPT, and mistakes will be made. I'll go back to edit, preferences, go ahead and remove this one, just keep that as a good practice. And I'll bring this one in. I'm feeling like errors are coming, but we'll go ahead and try this. A for all, delete. And I did like that add-on, so I'll go back to it if I have to. Shift A, mesh, add UV spheres. And I'll go ahead and hit play. And let's go over to cycles. Scene lights are on. I don't necessarily have to have the other stuff. And hey, look at that. It did add in the lights, but the intensity is not set. So if I turn up, and it's unfortunate because you can't really see those lights. That's why I like doing different type of lights. So with this setup here, the way it's going, I'll just go to the rigid body physics here, and I want to increase the friction just a little bit. And go ahead and hit play. See how this works now. Let's slow these balls down just a little bit. That's pretty cool. Now this did add our lights, but it didn't increase the intensity. So I'm actually just going to come in and manually turn that up. It's not really too big of a deal. I could have Chat-GPT do that if I want. And then you end up with something kind of weird like this. There you go. All right, so that's pretty cool. Go ahead and pause that, and I'm going to come back over here. Actually, I'm going to go in and find the documents. I'm going to grab this. I'll just open this file up because I want to get a fresh Chat-GPT going. Now, what I want to tell it to do is rewrite this script so the spheres fall to the plane like rain. And I'll hit period, shift, enter a couple times, and dump that in there. And I want to see what it's going to do. Now it's going to start writing that without it being in a block. So I always stop it right there. Rewrite your response in one block. And then hit enter. And it should fix it. And now it'll start writing that way. All right, so I deleted everything. And then kind of play with the code for a second. Just the same thing I've been doing. And I got add falling spheres. So we'll see what this actually ends up doing. Still looks like about the same setup, and nothing's really to scale. And it's interesting because one of the spheres is actually doing what I asked it to do. So it's just a matter of kind of playing around with it until you get what you want. Anyhow, that is it, everybody. Appreciate you guys watching. The fact that you can go in and do this is pretty big deal. And AI is just going to grow and grow and grow. And so I'm on board with some things. I'm not messing with the stable diffusion yet. I just got to give that a little bit longer because, you know, there's a I don't know if anybody realizes it, but there's an actual lawsuit going on with the stable diffusion. So like all the things you're using right now, you may not be able to use later. And so I'm not trying to mess with all that. I really appreciate, smash that subscribe and smash that like and support this channel. See you guys in the next one.